digestive distress, why gut health matters and how it affects how we feel. We will get into and touch on how our digestive tract and our gut is actually our second brain, and just really how important it is for us. Just to introduce myself, I'm Jennifer. I am a RMT, MOT, RYT, LLLT. I'm sure a couple other T's. So how I work is I'm a manual osteopath, and I do integrative nutrition coaching, and I'm a massage therapist, and I do low-level laser therapy. And basically, I don't teach yoga, but I do prescribe basically movements for clients to feel better. So I've been in the industry for over 10 years. I've seen a lot of things, and yeah, that's kind of a little bit about me. There are a few spelling mistakes in here. One of them is quite funny. I will point it out when we get there because I have a sadistic sense of humor. So what we're going to just be covering a quick overview. What is digestive distress and what causes it? Is gut health important, and what can we do to be better and feel better? Okay, so digestive distress. So genetics, environment, and diet, how we pass on those genetics to our children. And, you know, they get it from their mama. Thanks, Will.i.am. And we're also a product of our environment. So basically, we come into this world, and how we come into this world really matters. But right now, we'll just say that we are basically a product of our environment. So if you live in a really irritating environment where there's constant stressors, you're eating irritating food, you're not sleeping well, basically we will become a direct replica of our environment, and it will start in our gut. We are what we put in our body, and we are what we surround our body with. So food is functional medicine affecting our mental health and our daily living. Just the same as we can take pills to feel better, we can also look at our diet and what we're putting into our body and seeing how that's going to affect us. We will touch base on some different diets and some irritating foods and maybe how to supplement those. Veganism, vegetarianism. I'm not going to touch on any of that today, but I will just make a quick side note that none of the foods I have suggested are any meat products. So there is that, but there is one other thing, that if you are looking to still eat meat, organic does go a long way. I do think I'm going to release some information about how to eat organic meat on a budget. I hate saying the word budget, but it's expensive. There are ways to circumvent that, and that might be worth getting into. All right. Nearly all of our health issues are related to inflammation, and inflammation does start in the gut and digestive tract. Okay. So if you look at any chronic disease state, you are actually going to find that predominantly all of them start with inflammation. Just to name a few right off the hop, we're looking at arthritis, Crohn's disease, fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue. Any nerve pain is typically systemic of inflammation as well. Foundationally, the root cause of most disease is inflammation over a prolonged period. And there definitely is a way to circumvent that and to get around it. But first, we do need to get our gut under control. It's not in this slide, but I am going to jump ahead a little bit just because it is relevant here. Our gut is our second brain. So just to touch base on, and you rely on that gut feeling where you know something's just bad or something is for you. And there's a feeling that goes back to our gut. That is actually really rooted in that our gut is our second brain. So a lot of our terminology for our language is actually rooted in something. As an RMT and a body worker, people often say things like, oh, I have the weight of the world on my shoulders, or my chest feels heavy. And there's actual physiological stuff that goes along with those sayings and how they came about. So to say gut feeling, that is because we instinctually know in our body before we know in our brain. If you look at animals don't need to understand why something's good or bad. They just know that it is good or bad. So we as humans, we've gotten so used to wanting to analyze and dissect everything. But the truth of it is, if we were to actually listen to our bodies first, our bodies have to process information on such a massive scale and so quickly. Our bodies have actually already decided, like, that what is good and what is not good. It's actually our head that really messes with that system. And I mean, I'm not going to ask any personal questions, but what I will say is, if you want to look back on something in your life that you knew was wrong, or you had suspicions that maybe it wasn't the best thing, but you decided to do it anyways. And when it fell apart, did you ever just look back and reminisce and say, honestly, I just had a feeling? And you can almost pinpoint that moment in time when you knew it was amiss. I think we can kind of start to recognize that our bodies will actually give us the information so much quicker than our brains ever will. But we're systemically programmed to need to analyze and give a reason. You don't always need to give a reason. If we were to make this even more basic, have you ever smelled the food and it's just off? You don't want it in your body. You're just like, nope, absolutely not. I would almost guarantee that any foods you smell and you have a really adverse reaction to, like it's just the smell, you're actually probably allergic to. There's actually probably a sensitivity in your body that the more you consume it, the sicker you are going to get. Your body is hands down smarter than you are. We can study, our body doesn't need to study. So I digress.
I totally have actually found that also with dogs. Dogs that have allergies to food will actually like refuse to eat that food.
Yeah,
because they know
absolutely.
it makes them sick.
And it's funny you say that, because I switched our dog's food and they wouldn't even touch it. And to speak to that was like gonna like sprinkle like treats on it. And I just had this moment of being like, if they don't want to eat it, don't make them eat it. You know,
there's a reason. Yeah.
You're smarter than we are, right? Like that basic instinct for sure. Absolutely. Or like rancid meat. I don't know if, like, think about that. Have you ever smelt something and you're just like, like it's like that visceral reaction that our body's like, no, absolutely not. Right. We need to take a page out of animals' books sometimes, don't we? Okay, so we'll go back to inflammation. So does it really matter? And the short answer is yes, it absolutely matters. We've already touched on Crohn's disease, chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, and I mean, there's a host of disease that all stem from inflammation. Now, what's the short implications of inflammation? So we have chronic pain and fatigue, so exhaustion, brain fog. It's not in here, but right in the middle, you could actually put skin irritants. So eczema, psoriasis, and shingles is actually a nerve inflammation. But again, we talked about nerve inflammation. That's shingles. That is hands down shingles. I'm jumping ahead here, but super interesting fact, nightshade food, right? If you have a skin issue, typically nightshades will bring those out. So that's peppers, mainly peppers, tomatoes, things like that. But they will actually bring out eczema and some other skin issues. And it's actually a minor allergy that happens inside of the gut that will actually bring these allergens to the system, and your skin's trying to communicate with you to please stop eating these things. Okay. So chronic pain and fatigue, premature aging. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I would like to slow down the aging process and try to, like, ride the youth train as long as I can. I watched Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone last night, so I'll leave all my Harry Potter references behind, I think, right now. But anyways, I'm thinking them. So premature aging, so that's fine lines, but also that's weight gain. That is oral health and things like that. Cellulite, adipose tissue, where it's stored, how it's stored, things like that, especially around our abdomen. There is another slide that will speak to visceral fat, so abdominal fat, and why it's really dangerous. So the cortisone production, cortisone, that should say cortisol, not cortisone. Caught one. So production is the fastest aging hormone. So basically that's our stress hormone that when we live in chronic anxiety and stress, and remember that can be a toxic environment, but that can also be toxic food that we're putting inside of our bodies as well. It will age us faster. And I mean, as much as vanity wants to say, oh, it's just aging, really how we look on the outside can be a mirror of what's going on in the inside, right? If you're dehydrated, that your skin's going to show that really, really quick. It's going to show up quick. Okay, holding fat, no matter how much you diet or exercise. A really common misconception, this saying, air quote, abs are made in the kitchen. Yeah, I mean, that's true, but why? Right? Like it's such a blanket statement. Abs are made in the kitchen. You can diet or exercise until the cows come home. But basically, if your fat cells can also be inflamed. Cells are cells, it doesn't matter. So they can hold inflammation. As long as your body's holding inflammation, you will not lose that weight. They're inflamed. Your body's going to hang on to them for dear life. If you've ever talked to someone who's trying to lose weight or has been dieting for a significant amount of time, you'll hear them say, oh, I have 10 more to go, but it's in that really stubborn blah, 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 fill in the blanks. Typically, it's going to be in the abdomen, but it can be anywhere. I just recently spoke to a woman who couldn't lose weight in her legs. And it was actually due to a vascular problem and a heart condition that wouldn't have been caught had she not kind of brought it up and said, I can't lose this weight. Well, vascular issues tend to hold weight in the legs. Anyways, it's not always body image. Sometimes it is diet and exercise. Oh, sorry, I lost there we go. That diet and exercise is important. The visceral fat, I was trying to not go there, but we're going to go there. So the visceral fat is basically, it's different. There's regular fat, and then there's visceral fat. So visceral fat is the fat that goes around our organs. And it's basically how we become a structure to absorb impact. And so that when we fall or whatever, our guts don't go, I won't say splat because that's maybe not the best way to put it. But anyways, it's a protective insulation layer. But when we have too much visceral fat, that's when we really start seeing a ton of medical issues. Like a ton. That's when we start to see the irreversible medical issues that we cannot come back from. And they start to be just maintenance. So we're talking heart attacks, diabetes, strokes, organ disease, and, some pretty serious stuff. So visceral fat is a different kind of fat. You will not lose it if you're holding inflammation. I'm not going to get into this too much, but what the heck is a microbe, right? Hint, it's the main contributor to leaky gut. Okay, so when I first heard leaky gut, I don't know, there's some movie with Cameron Diaz, like from years ago, and he's reading a bag of chips and it has a warning that it may cause like leaky gut syndrome. And I always think of that scene. I was gonna say nothing's leaking out of your gut, but technically it actually is. So the cells in our gut, if you see my knuckles, they should be interlocked like this. Nothing should get through those bad boys. Like you could karate chop those walls and nothing's coming through. So leaky gut is actually when they're not tight, but they start to have spaces. So microbes, that's where a microbe comes in. And so they start to kind of sneak out those cracks, and microbes will actually attach to the larger particles that are sneaking out with them. So that is what leaky gut is. Leaky gut is when you are getting more particles through your intestinal lining than really should be coming through. Why is this a big deal? Okay, let's say you have a gluten allergy, and our gut is designed to take care of that allergy, not let it into our immune system. And it's basically our gut is the barrier of the outside world to the inside world, right? So now we have gluten, which we're allergic to, and it's not contained, and it's just floating on out into our external world, which is our system. That's when we start to get really sick. You can have a gluten intolerance and just not feel great after you eat too much gluten, but then you will see people like celiacs. And I mean, those are the far scale. And there's many places in between.
Sorry, is that also then like how viruses and stuff enter our digestive tract?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. So that inflammation, so great question. So the inflammation, a key part of our immunity. So our digestive tract, when that barrier is broken and we consume something, yes, it's going to escape into our system. But the other thing about that is protein in our system. Again, that's a whole nother conversation. So it could be allergens, but say protein, our body doesn't know what it is. So so we actually start to attack ourselves. And that's really what the inflammation is. And that is what causes the systemic response. So when our body is busy attacking ourselves, now a virus enters us through our eyeballs, our nose, wherever it's coming in from, right? So yes, it could come through our gut. If it got through our stomach acid, which it can, again, I'm getting a little deep here. But now our body is busy fighting all these molecules that are kind of floating off into our body. And so the virus goes unchecked, or it doesn't have the defense that maybe it should have. Does that make sense? Yeah. And then as for our stomach acid, our stomach acid, our healthy stomach acid, it should be the equivalent of battery acid. So we could, if you had like healthy stomach acid and you poured it on something, it would just, that stuff is wild. Stomach acid is crazy. But when we are full of inflammation and our gut health is not in check, typically our stomach acid becomes the acidity of vinegar. Yeah. So your question about it going through our system, if our stomach, like if you were going to drink a vial of virus, which sounds horrible, would you want battery acid or vinegar to combat that? Because I personally would like battery acid with a side of Power Rangers if I'm drinking a vial of it, but whatever, So
Also, on
yeah.
a side note, back to relating to pets, because that's what I know.
Yeah.
Dogs actually have like way stronger stomach acid than we do, which is why they can eat like raw meat and
Yeah.
like semi-rotten meats. So
Yeah.
Mommy?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I don't think we give animals enough credit. Like, have you ever given your dog like a treat and they smell it and they walk away and they're like, ooh, no. And it's like what you were just snacking on. And you just have that moment to be like, what am I eating? Like, if they won't eat it, what am I doing? So leaky gut, one, it's not as scary as it sounds. Your guts aren't like leaking fluid. It's not like literal, but it is leaking cells, and there is something going on in the membrane there. What our digestive tract does. So our gut is our second brain. We've kind of already covered that, just that visceral knowing, that gut instinct. Some people really operate their lives, actually me included. I base nearly everything on gut feeling, whether that's friendships, adventures, anything, really it's about my gut feeling. So I think a lot of people may be able to speak to that. And then maybe there is another topic that we have a conversation in the future about dissociation from our body and how we actually stop experiencing what our body is feeling through turning down the pain volume because we are experiencing discomfort or inflammation in our body. So we actually neurologically turn down that pain volume. And what that means for us is now we're not getting that second brain that, in fairness, is smarter than our first brain, because it doesn't need to think. It's just, it boom knows, right? So there is disassociation. So we can disassociate from our gut. And you'll see in food addiction, that is really, really common. So another session that will be coming up will be carbohydrates, and really understanding what carbohydrates mean and why we're so disassociated from carbs. Simple carbs they basically make us drunk. They are a drug. They are an addiction. So I mean, really, we can disassociate from that knowingness of our body. We've touched on this one too, a major part of the immune system. So immunity starts in our immunity starts in our digestive tract and can be greatly impaired here as well. So that's really going back to that battery acid versus vinegar, how we combat irritants that we've left in our system. But one thing that we haven't talked about is the molecules from those microbiomes. If we are constantly eating man-made or manufactured foods, when we consume those, they go into our body and our body doesn't recognize them. So they'll launch a full-scale attack on basically the foods we've eaten. And that's when you're going to see the bloating, the gas, the stomach aches, the gut rot, the indigestion. A lot of people, myself included, I will get, they're not pimples, they're actually very sore, but it's like little bumps right here on our neck. And why we get those is because there's glands right there. So now our lymphatic system is involved. And basically, our lymphatics, our endocrine system, are trying to push all that junk out of our body. And acne, people with systemic acne, if you have skin problems, really pay attention to those skin problems, right? So our skin is actually the last system of our health, of our immune system. It's our last defense. So when we start seeing the food we eat affecting our skin, that is a big red flag. Huge, big, huge red flag. Okay. And I do really implore you guys or anyone listening to this video in an afterplay, really, if your skin is flaring up, specifically in your chest or here, really pay attention to that. It's a really important message. Okay. Predisposition to weight. Visceral fat. Why is the fat more dangerous than other fats? Again, I get excited and go way ahead of myself, which I mean is a beauty and a flaw, right? So we actually have a predisposition in our genetics to what our weight is like and how it's carried. However, where we carry inflammation is also going to be where we have, quote unquote, air quote, stubborn fat. It's not stubborn. It's not well. It's inflamed. It's sick. Fat. So adipose tissue is a fat cell, and each of those cells can be inflamed. As long as they're inflamed, they're always going to be there. They're going to be painful. You're going to have issues there. One thing I haven't said, and I mean, this is like, if I could draw a line smack in the middle, varicose veins and anything that you see going on top of skin. So let's say not acne, not shingles, not eczema, not like say a skin condition, but you're seeing redness, you're seeing swelling, you're seeing, so those spider veins. As a therapist, when I'm working with clients, the absolute first thing I look for is to see what the skin's saying. Literally, your body will tell you where there's issues just by the coloration of the skin. So it's a huge tell. Again, skin is our friend. It's our last line of defense. I know I'm like absolutely beating this one to death, but I mean, I've been in this industry for 10 years, and I'm telling you that the minute I start working with the client, I had a client today who I was like, not to be strange, but can I lift up your shirt and look at your skin? He said, yes, but of course there is a big mark there. Okay. This can actually be true of birthmarks. Any marking on the skin, it's basically a map. All right, now that I have absolutely beat that into the ground, I will move on. So what can we do? And actionable steps to better gut health. Okay, fermented foods, fermented vegetables, kombucha, yogurt, kefir, sauerkraut, and kimchi. I do have to make a bit of a side note here. So kombucha is not meant to be drank like Western society like suggests that we are supposed to drink it. Like we buy it in these like gigantic bottles. Like half a glass, a cup of kombucha a day is a lot. If you go to the store and you buy it, like please do not, like, you, if you want to drink a full one, go ahead. But if you are full of toxins and stuff that your body wants to get rid of, like, I'm just telling you, be prepared for some headaches, be prepared for some bad guts. You're going to get gassy. You are going to have a reaction to that. Fermented foods are very much medicine. Treat it like medicine. Do not just go, if you've never drank kombucha, don't go buy a liter of it, please, and drink it. You're gonna think that everyone who likes kombucha is crazy. And I don't know, maybe they are.
Well, it's like a lot of the stuff too that you find in like the grocery store, isn't it like diluted? Because I often find it's like flavored and
Yeah, it could be. I mean, there's definitely a part of that that could be true. I do think that there's some marketing in that, right? Where they
right,
want you
and
to buy the big one and
a little added sugar.
yeah, they want you to be able to drink it all. There are some really good ones out there. But when we get to the last slide, hopefully you guys hang around. I actually am going to offer to email some ways to make your own fermented foods at home. And it's easy. Like when I say easy, I mean like put it on the counter and forget about it for 30 days. Easy. I mean, and it costs nothing. And it's actually better than the stuff you'll buy in the store. In terms of kombucha, making mother. So mother is basically the yeast of the kombucha. You can buy a mother pack. And what I always say to people is if you have people in your life that like that hippie, I call it the hippie shit, but if they like that stuff too, then say to them like, hey, let's trade mothers, and you make one and they can make one and trade it. Like I love lavender kombucha, and one of my friends likes honey, and so we make it and we kind of trade back and forth between the two of us. I 100%, if you can get someone on board with that, it's nice to have different flavors. It's nice to not do all the work, right? And that mother, like honestly, it can keep going and going and going. Like it'll never stop. I think it might be like a $20 investment, and you probably never have to buy another one if you don't want to. Kimchi, if you like spicy food, that's great. Yogurt, kefir. I mean, one thing to keep in mind here is that okay, so yogurt and kefir, yes, they are great. If you are dairy intolerant or you have a dairy allergy, I would suggest maybe staying away from these ones. Kefir is dairy on steroids. So if you are not super great with dairy, I would avoid kefir. Sauerkraut, toss it in a soup, toss it in anything, it's great. Fermented vegetables, again, if you are interested in the recipe, we can just fire those vegetables or just put those vegetables and we can ferment them, and they actually make like lovely, if your summer's coming up, they make lovely like pasta salad additives, and just to fill it up, quite good. So I am going to jump over to pre and probiotics because yes, you can supplement pre and probiotics, but if you are going to supplement pre and pros, be very picky about quality. Be very, very picky about quality.
So that's my biggest question, is that how can you tell quality? Like there's some that are kept in the cooler, some that are just on the shelf. Like how do you know?
This is why I have such an issue with the health industry. Honestly, the best way to know is if you can call your local naturopath buy it from a professional. Yeah. So the other thing is, if it's in a bottle on a shelf, nah, it's dead.
Yeah, it's not
So
alive. Yeah.
yeah. So pre and probiotics, they're living bacteria, and they need a host to survive off of. I feel like we watched too many alien movies the other day, and I'm like still like mortified about it. So yeah, it freaks me out. But so I mean, yeah, if it's not on a host, and then basically it will, like, when you consume it, it will die, but you're basically letting it do the work for you in the process of its passing. Right. So yeah, it honestly, I would say if it's not in a cooler, it's probably not great. Also check the date of it. If it's not, if it's like, so it's 2021 right now, if it's good until like March of 2022, yeah, probably not. So I would honestly just call your local naturopath and just say, I want to get a pre or probiotic. There is a difference between pre and pros. It's a complicated one. If you are interested, I highly suggest maybe let me know. We can chat about it. I can send you some information. Okay. And then I was going to go off I was going to mention something else about the fermented foods and pre and pros. It's gone. It'll come back in a different slide when it's not relevant, but I'll remember. All right. So eliminating food allergens. So these are some of them, but not all of them. Gluten, eggs, dairy, wheat, and soy. Fish can be another one. There is a couple more. These are the big ones. Gluten and wheat, they can kind of go hand in hand. I'm not gonna go down a big rabbit hole with this one, because it is a complicated topic. If you have a wheat problem, if you were to eat, like, say, sprouted grain bread, you'd be fine with that. So gluten is really an additive, and wheat is more of like a wheat product. Whereas if you were to find sprouted grain, those do tend to be okay for people that don't do wheat well. Eliminating food, there is the diet. You can kind of, if you are interested, you could do like a week without one, without the other, and just see how it goes. Maybe that'll spur you into wanting to find out more. If you are having chronic issues, I actually really do suggest an elimination diet. And I think in April, I'll actually be hosting a challenge and like kind of a group guided elimination diet, so that you can go through it with a group and find foods in your local area that work with one another, right? A week is good. 3 weeks is medically recommended. 2 weeks, I find, is what people are comfortable with doing. By the end of the diet, it can get pretty intense. So yeah, but I mean, you'll look and feel like an absolute $1,000,000, and you'll find some really cool new foods too. You'll also find some really horrible new foods. Funny story, I was trying to get rid of wheat in my diet, I don't know, maybe about a year ago. And I bought this bread, and I have never tasted anything that tasted like fermented dirt like this bread. So, I mean, that's why it's nice to do it with a group, right? If someone's found something good, and you can kind of ride on each other's coattails and say, hey, I found this, I found that. That's awesome. It is really nice to do with a group. Otherwise, it can feel very daunting and isolating when you can't eat what everyone else is eating. And it's nice to have some support with that. So what is a gut irritant? So alcohol, caffeine. I think everyone kind of knows that, that those are pretty common. Ironically, wine is different than typical alcohol. Now, if you're drinking like a bottle a night, yeah, you're going to hurt the villi in your intestinal tract. They're maybe not great. But wine is actually, I'm pointing at my screen like you can see me, you can't. a fermented food here. Okay. Hey, if you're doing a gut health challenge, enjoy a beverage. Maybe a nice wine would be a good one to go with. Caffeine, I mean, caffeine in moderation. Caffeine is also good for you, but just in moderation, right? So sodas, diet sodas, juice drinks, energy drinks. I mean, I'm not going to go deep into this rabbit hole. I think the media's done a really good job at dealing with this. Energy drinks, that's straight poison. Just for all the reasons, stay away from those, please. Juice, if you're making your own juices, hey, that's great. But again, those are super high in fructose, super high in calories. You're going to be drinking a lot of calories and a ton of fiber. And when you drink liquid fiber, you're basically taking like a triple shot of Metamucil. So, I mean, heads up. But I mean, juice drinks, they're really so loaded with preservatives and sugar. They're not great. Sugar-free products. Okay, so before I even go into the additives here, sugar-free. I mean, I saw a meme one time and it hit me good. Anything that says diet is code for chemical shitstorm. Our bodies do not know how to process diet foods. Okay, so if it's sugar-free diet food, enjoy the real thing in moderation. Live your life. I mean, aside if it's a diabetic issue or underlying health issue, I mean, of course, but those diet foods, honestly, I don't think there's anything worse in the world for you. If you're gonna have a pop, just honestly drink a regular pop. The chemicals in it are just wild. And I mean, we talked about how our gut or how our bodies, the interlocking systems, our bodies just don't know what to do with those chemicals. And you want to talk about inflammation and gut irritants and you just want to fire up that chemical tornado that's going to happen inside of us. You may not notice it here and there, but if it's ongoing, really, that is when we're looking at some of those really, really big systemic issues. Okay. Products with polyol, I don't know. Gummy additives, guar, Arabic, carrageenan. I can't even say those things. If I can't say them, I don't think we should be eating them. Okay. But basically the thickeners, right? Those gummy candies, thickeners, additives. If it's a really bright color, it's probably got some pretty dangerous stuff in it. Think of Skittles. What's Skittles logo or phrase? Taste the rainbow. Like if it's not a vegetable, it's probably not a great idea, right? All right. So whole food mentality. So when I say a whole food mentality and I say, okay, I'll read this and it says, check the ingredients list. Is there more than 5? Can you find an alternative? So this is for ingredients. So I had a stir fry that was left over from dinner last night. There's like, because the stir fry has more than 5 ingredients, I mean, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about what I put in, the ingredients that goes into my food. If it has a list of more than 5 ingredients, can you find a better substitute? So I like the example of salad dressing. If I, instead of using, say, a diet or fat-free salad dressing, there's some like absolutely wonderful salad dressings that are organic and they actually go bad. If you leave them on the counter, they will go rotten. And that's fabulous, right? So if it goes rotten, perfect, even better. And then, I mean, can you sub it? So instead of salad dressing, can it be apple cider vinegar? Can it be balsamic vinegar? Can it be salsa? You know, can you make your own dressing? And it's amazing how easy it actually is to do this. And they're quite good. And if you are looking to reduce weight or take care of chronic pain, this will make a huge difference. So like I said, and this is not, okay, this is not always sustainable. Like one of my big ones is I really like salsa, and salsa is not terrible for you, right? Like salsa is pretty good for you. Yeah, it's loaded full of salt, but I find salsa is one of my like kind of food hacks where it makes it goes good in a lot of things. But if I buy a salsa, I mean, it's got a lot of ingredients. Sometimes we make it fresh. Sometimes I don't have the energy. So, I mean, moderation, right? So there are times this is totally doable. There's other times it's not. That's okay. That's okay. I think
I
it's more
made
about
some salsa this summer.
what?
I canned some salsa.
Did you? We
Mm.
make ours fresh all the time, and we haven't gotten into canning, but that's
I'll
that's
teach you the ways.
I would love to learn actually. So I mean, just moderation, right? Just lots of moderation. Okay. So healing our gut is healing our body and mind. I know that sounds a little wooey and a little hippie, but it's actually true. A lot of our anxiety and is based in our gut. Now we're looking maybe not so much at the physical aspect, but more the mental health aspect. It's absolutely tied into the gut. So mindful eating, activating digestion, increasing saliva, decreasing bloating, and just so people are aware, we actually activate our digestive system when we smell food. So if we're eating it so fast that we never smell it, like our saliva doesn't kick in, like our acid doesn't turn up in our stomach, like there's a real digestive process that happens. So enjoying your food, and taking time to chew it and eat it, which I'm terrible for. I don't sometimes get a lot of time between appointments. So I'm at the counter, like inhaling food. And even I know as I'm doing it, I'm thinking, oh geez, this is not great. But we still do it. I mean, I understand. I'm just saying, take a few moments when you can to try to incorporate maybe some mindful eating. Oh, look, there's another spelling error. I didn't even notice it. I should stop pointing it out. Whatever. Yeah, so just taking a time to enjoy it. Sit down with a friend or your partner. And I mean, once this situation that must not be named is over, I think we'll all really enjoy sitting down with our friends, and we won't take it for granted anymore, right? And just inhale our food. Let it be an experience. Enjoy your dinner, enjoy your time, enjoy the company. I mean, you're supposed to chew 30 times. I've done it. It's a lot. 30 times is a lot, but it's okay. I should learn. I could be better too. Okay, meditation and stress reduction. So we've touched on this before. If we live in an irritating environment, we eat irritating foods, we will actually be irritated and have an irritated body. Meditation does not have to be this like sit down, like 30-minute, extra, thought blocking exercise. Meditation can also be just like practicing gratitude through the day, or like when you're driving, turn off the music and really just don't try to think about things. Just let yourself have a moment. If it's in the shower, just let yourself be. I mean, meditation can actually be a really simple, easy process of just letting yourself not be stressed out for that 5 or 10 minutes that you can spare in the day. I do understand everyone's busy and that it's maybe not as cut and dry as to say, oh, we're going to go meditate. But if you can incorporate it in your day, I mean, if you're standing in the grocery line, to just take a moment and deep breathe through your diaphragm, push your tummy out, bring it back in. No one even has to know you're doing it, but just taking those few minutes for yourself throughout the day to let your system rebalance. In terms of what this does for your endocrine system and your pineal gland and your adrenals, which is again where all your cortisol is manufactured, these few bits through the day, if you're struggling with cortisol, I absolutely recommend taking these moments. My favorite hack as a therapist is to constantly give like achievable home care. Like, I'm not going to tell you to go stretch for like 30 minutes a day, right? Because realistically, the 10-minute walk we take is better than the 2-mile run that we didn't, right? So achievable is best. Okay.
I always take that time when I'm in a waiting room. And I look
Yeah,
around, like everybody's always on their phone, and I'm like, why can they not just like sit and be present, like
absolutely.
for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, like while you're waiting in a waiting room?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Like
Because
there's
you
actually,
used to,
yeah, before we had
before the cell
Facebook on our
phones,
phones. Yeah,
yeah, you would just
totally.
sit there and
Well,
wait.
and I don't know about you guys, but I find when I'm stressed out, I pull up and look at my screen more, but I feel actually significantly worse after I do it. Like it doesn't help. It doesn't help
Yeah,
anything.
so it's always like doctor's appointments, dentist, whatever. Like I'll never be on my phone. I just sit, just
Yeah,
enjoy the quiet.
smart and perfect. That's exactly it. And mine's when I'm driving. A modern classical artist that I just think plays the most beautiful music. And whenever I listen to, I think it's Ab Ovo, it just like puts me in a trance. And I find I can incorporate practicing gratitude and meditation. I mean, obviously safety first while I'm driving, right? Like I'm not like meditating while I'm driving, but I'm just taking like that moment. And I just sit there and listen and think, geez, like this song's so beautiful. What a, and just giving ourselves a moment to find appreciation through our day, the amount of good that does for our adrenals and our pituitary gland and our cortisol production, it is phenomenal. It just those little bursts that we can actually reabsorb. Now, I mean, okay, so again, I'm going to jump off topic. This is so fascinating to me. So cortisol needs to be reabsorbed. So basically, if we're just living in excess cortisol production, we're aging faster, we feel like garbage, we're irritable, we're not sleeping good. Our leptin, which means our hunger hormone, is like all over the place. So that's when we start binge eating. And honestly, it's just a really dangerous cycle. We've all been there. I've been there, especially last year, right? So serotonin is one of the hormones that helps reabsorb cortisol. I should make a disclaimer that I'm like 80% sure I'm right that it's serotonin, but if it's not, anyways, the happiness hormone could be dopamine. One of the other ones, they do help reabsorb. So if I'm wrong, please forgive me. But I know it is one. I just maybe have the name wrong. But so when we find moments to practice gratitude or find peace through our day, we will actually start to bit by bit reabsorb that excess cortisol in our system, right? And then within a week, you'll actually notice you feel better. I mean, this is again, take the 10-minute walk and be happy with that if you can't get a 2-mile run in. If you can find ways to practice calming, and gratitude is the best way to actually almost immediately release serotonin, like our peace hormone. And actually magnesium is another easy hack to get that done as well. Magnesium is lovely and I recommend it to everyone. Yeah, that's another conversation also. This actually leads quite beautifully into the next one. This is the spelling mistake that I was talking about, enjoyment. Like you'd think I didn't proofread this, but I did. I don't know what happened. So I just find it funny at this point. Okay, so finding our enjoyment. So kind of just spoke to that. So getting rid of excess cortisol production is the first step to really feeling better. So the first step to healing, whether it's our gut, our digestive tract, our health, our happiness, our honestly, everything, is to stop doing damage. So step 1 is to realize what's hurting us, and step 2 is to take actions to stop doing it, and step 3 is to start to incorporate ways for us to actually undo the damage. But you can eat as many fermented foods as you want. If you are still doing chronic damage to yourself through like massive stress and a toxic environment, be that food, people, work, sleep, whatever it is, I mean, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. So step one is just try to stop doing the damage. Finding your own enjoyment. So it's actually creating joy in your own time and what that means to you. Maybe one day I'll upload a video. Maybe one day I'll upload a video of how I find joy. I do have one. It's actually really, really funny. So have I told you? I've told you about my bathtub singing.
No.
I haven't. Okay, so my bathtub singing has actually brought other people mass amounts of joy as well. I have one friend that was having a bad day, so I filmed myself singing to her in the bathtub, and it is wild. It is absolutely wild. So where this comes from, finding your own enjoyment. And I mean, on the next slide, I do talk about self-care. And I mean, I am such a firm believer in getting absolutely wild and wacky with your self-care. Like, just get crazy with it. It doesn't have to be for everyone else. It can really just be for your own self. And mine's singing in the bathtub. And when I say singing, I mean yelling. I mean, one time my little dog peed outside the bathroom because he was like so scared, and he was like, "What's happening?" But I was jamming. I was Shania Twain, and I was like 90s playlist essentials. It was amazing. I'm going to go back just to my example. So finding enjoyment. Okay, so I'm singing as loud as I can to my favorite songs in the world. Makes me happy. The music makes me happy. And then when I'm yelling or yelling when I'm singing, I'm actually, sending vibrations through my thoracic cavity, up through my brain stem, and it's rattling around in my brain and up here where my pituitary is, right? And then it actually really helps with like reorganizing our hormone center and really helping that, right? So one, I'm like releasing all the lymphatics in my chest. It's good for my lungs. It's good for my throat. It's a stress reliever. I'm in hot water. Like I've accidentally dyed myself pink in my baths with my bath bombs. Like it's been a whole thing, okay? But I love them and I just belt out, and there's so much therapeutic value. And those bath times are also when I take care of myself, right? Maybe it is aesthetic and maybe it is vanity, but I will tell you that when I do face masks, and I leave a face mask on for as long as my song, and then I do a new face mask. And the thing is, yes, it is vanity, but when you start to fill your own cup, you start to feel better, and it actually creates this cycle where like the next day I'm like, dang, I'm looking good. I should drink more water. And then I want to exercise, and then I want to catch up with friends, and I want to fill their cup. And so it actually is this cycle. And when you start to give to yourself, it does create this perpetuation of care, whether it's for yourself or for others. So finding your own enjoyment. I mean, I have a friend that's running. Some people say it's animals or dogs, right? But finding whatever that is for you, and it can be as wacky as you want it to be. I would just say like maybe find something that doesn't include like drugs or alcohol. And I know that, but really, I know that sounds, a lot of our relaxation techniques are around drinking or, recreational drugs. And I just say, we're trying to feed our system and get our hormones back. So if you can do it kind of like, when I say naked, I mean, I don't mean like bathtub naked. I mean like naked from maybe outside influences or environmental factors. Okay, long-term solutions for better health. So again, understanding different diets. There absolutely, there's food maps diet. There are diets specifically for gut health, for rebalancing hormones. That really does all stem from your digestive tract and from your gut health. Knowing our cortisol triggers, right? So if we know something sets us off, either if we can't avoid it, being prepared for it, understanding it, maybe negotiating some of the factors of it. I have a few things that absolutely trigger me, and I get like shaky and weird. Just managing that within ourselves, right? And understanding what self-care is really. I mean, yes, it can be bath time and masks and all these different things, but it, it can be a walk. It can be watching a movie from when you remember being really happy in your life, or calling a friend. Or self-care is not always fun either. Maybe it's digging into some trauma or something that, you've gone through and really understanding and talking it out, whether that's therapy or through a friend or a trusted person, right? So really starting to take care of ourselves to get that cortisol reabsorbed and really to start to rebalance some of those hormones. Anatomy and how we work is basically my passion. Seeing clients get better is the best part of my day, and I love to learn. It's a real win-win for me. I'm a super anatomy geek, so that's kind of always popping up in my practice, which is basically why I'm here. And if you are interested in learning more, please leave your email and join the Facebook page if you haven't already. If you do send me your email, I will send out recipes to make your own fermented foods, as well as a list of foods to enjoy and what to avoid based on gut health. And yeah, I'm always accepting.
Are pickles fermented? Okay,
Yeah.
good. Because I do love pickles. Okay. But not like as good, because they're not.
Yeah.
Are they? Are they like sauerkraut? So like, are they as good or?
Technically, yes.
Oh.
The store-bought ones, unfortunately, no.
Okay. Well, I make my own. That's why I can.
Yeah.
I make pickles.
Okay. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So basically, if it's been in vinegar for a period of time, it's fermenting. So pickles is one of them. I didn't put them on the list only for the reason that most people eat store-bought pickles. And I believe it's the salt content is really, really high. Yeah, so if you have any suggestions for upcoming classes, like let me know. It could be health related, but if you wanted to see like any self treatments or anything like that, I can always write those up and do those for you as well.
I can't completely recall like all the ones that you mentioned, but they all sounded interesting.
Yeah, and
the ones that you mentioned throughout the.
And I try to pick ones that kind of seem to be coming up for people and maybe not for myself. Yeah, I don't know. I think all these classes are kind of neat because if they don't speak to us right now, they might speak to us in the future also, right? And then, yeah, so coming up, I do have a 5-week inflammation course, how to live, feel, and be better without inflammation. 195, it's now regular 125, or regular 195. It's now on for 125, limited time, limited space. And that will start up on March 22nd. If people can't make it to the class, there is a workbook, and in the workbook, I will actually ask for questions and basically understanding what everyone in the group needs, so that if they can't make it, their questions and lifestyle issues will all still be addressed. Oh, and that's it. So that is me done. I'm glad you could make it.
Yeah. No, the inflammation is like the root of all evil.
It really is. Yeah.
Bad things. I was just interested, like, what's your take on dairy? Because from like whole food things that I've read, like dairy is also like quite the trigger for inflammation.
Dairy is a really loaded question. Yeah.
It's a really what?
It's a really loaded question.
Oh, right.
Yeah, because there's actually a few more mitigating factors. So there's
the dairy we consume.
Yeah. So, I mean, there are the people, I shouldn't say people, but there is the ethical standpoint. So depending on how you look at dairy.
Yeah, I'm not a fan, just FYI.
Yeah.
Like we don't drink dairy, like we don't drink cow's milk. Yeah, just because of the things I've learned. And then too, like I stopped and realized at one point, I was like, why are we drinking breast milk from another animal?
Yeah. And I mean, honestly, it's a personal choice for people. Some people, dairy doesn't bother. In the vegan community and in the Buddhist community, so if you're getting really deep into the nature of food, Dairy cows that are from like dairy, I'm not going to say any brands, but the cows that are basically in these massive
farms.
farms, they're not treated well. So there is the thought that basically you are what you consume. So I mean, if they're living really unwell, and we've just talked about our gut hormones, and we're basically consuming really, really unhealthy animals or animal products. That is one thought. I do see the value in it, hormones and additives and everything. That's a whole other conversation that I actually don't think I'm educated enough on to speak to. In terms of allergens, dairy is, but so dairy absolutely is one of the 5 allergens that if you were doing an elimination diet that you would give up. I don't do well with it. So most people, I find most people, dairy issues will show up in their skin.
Yeah, my sister has like crazy dairy issues. I don't seem to have any issues, but who's to say? I've never really cut it out.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is, what I find really fascinating about dairy issues is because it shows up in the skin so quick. And like we said, our skin is our last line of defense. So if it shows up in our last line of defense like that, I mean,
yeah,
that's something to think about, right?
No.
Yeah. I love cheese. I
love
cheese.
That is right. I can't,
Yeah,
like, I can
I
do
personally,
the milk, I can do the whatever, but
I personally don't consume really much dairy at all besides cheese. And actually, when I was doing the research for this video or for this class, cheese, so casein basically makes our bodies release serotonin and dopamine. And so when you're breastfeeding or a mother's breastfeeding their baby, when they're drinking milk, they basically want them to be sedated and they want them to calm down and they want them to kind of enjoy drinking the milk so that they can grow and get stronger and defend themselves, right? So literally milk is designed to sedate and induce a state of like minor euphoria.
Well, milk drunk, right?
Yeah, exactly. That is exactly what it is. And so this made me so sad. So if you were to take basically all the water out of milk, you now have cheese. So it's basically all of the really addictive properties of the sedative nature of our milk drunk, basically in solid formation. So unfortunately, when people say I can't live without my cheese,
like literally,
it's actually they mean it. It's a real thing. Cheese addiction could be up there with like alcohol and drugs,
right?
and sugar.
Thank you. Okay. Yeah, and sugar. That's another one. Oh my God, I cannot kick sugar.
Yeah.
I would really like to rid my life of it, but they hide it in everything.
Yeah. Really the only way to get through. So I am actually going to do like a sugar detox challenge probably in spring as well, and run it with a group, and mostly for more reasons that there's someone kind of helping you through it. So if you're addicted to sugar, typically it's not the sugar you're addicted to. You probably actually have a candida overgrowth.
Oh, okay.
So candida is actually yeast, and it's yeast in the brain. So that's when you're going to have fatigue, brain fog, poor memory, things like that. A lot of joint pain as well.
Okay. That's where the apple cider vinegar comes in.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can, and fermented foods will actually really, really help with that as well. There's a real way to go through a sugar addiction, and that is to basically supplement the foods that kill off the candida, and then to start incorporating, to incorporate the foods that kill off, but then you actually have to starve the candida, so the yeast bacteria in your body until it dies. And it can be a tough process. And this is where education about carbohydrates becomes really, really important, because as carbohydrates go, yeah, exactly. right? We may think that we're like sugar-free and all this stuff, and we've done so great. And then in one meal, we could like blow up our, all those starving candida, and we're just like, meh, and then feed them, and then we run into trouble again, right? Well, thanks for joining. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, for sure. Do you want to say goodbye?
Bye, Ash.